Sandra walked down the dark street, the light from the lamppost giving her shadow an elongated effect. She drew her coat closer around her against the night's chill. She hated working nights, but the pay differential at the bar was something that couldn't be ignored. She worked their weekends as a bartender to help her pay for nursing school. She kept her head down, but glanced up periodically to check her surroundings. She lived in a quiet suburb where crime wasn't rampant, but one could never be too safe. Her little ranch house was just around the corner, and soon she would be wrapped up in a blanket on the couch, getting lost in some reality TV show. The thought made her smile, and she quickened her pace. A laugh in the darkness made her look up. At the end of the street to her left stood two children. Sandra could barely make them out in the darkness, but they stood stock still, watching her. One was a little taller than the other, and they grasped hands. Sandra's brow furrowed. She checked her watch as she picked up her pace. It was nearly 3 a.m. Why were two kids out alone this time of night? Most likely they were up to no good, and she didn't want any parts of that. Maybe it was just her paranoia, but they seemed off somehow. She saw them out of the corner of her eye, continued to watch her as she turned into the street she lived on. Sandra breathed a sigh of relief as she closed her front door behind her and locked it. She was home. She called out to her husband before remembering that he was away on business. John was in pharmaceuticals, and he traveled all over selling drugs to different doctors. They had met at a conference 2 years ago, and the rest had been history. She had never been afraid to stay by herself like some women were. The quiet of her little house soothed her like a warm cup of tea. She changed into her PJs and was settling herself down on the couch when the knock on her door came. Sandra glanced up and stared into the dark hallway, listening. The house was old and was always making strange creaks and groans. The refrigerator alone made strange popping and hissing noises. When she didn't hear anything else, she grabbed the remote and turned to the TV. Knock, knock, knock. Sandra rolled her eyes and threw her blanket off. She was tired and just wanted to doze off on the couch. But being the responsible person she was, she couldn't discard the noise again, and it clearly sounded like it was coming from her front door. But who would be knocking at this time in the morning? She padded down the hall and over to the door. 2 long frosted window panes were on either side of her front door, and Sandra squinted through them to see if she could make out who it was.